Now, here's your host, Dan Celia.
Good morning. Welcome back to Financial Issues. I'm Dan Celia. It's great to be here. And we've got practically none to speak of anyway, real economic news coming out this week. I mean, we have some typical numbers, the usual kinds of numbers, but nothing earth-shattering coming out. We do have some interesting things going on in Washington with the budget debate going on. So I do want to talk a little bit about that, just give you an update as to where we are in that budget debate right now. Frankly, I'm not real crazy about where we are. There's not a whole lot I like about it. And it looks like the two chairmen of this committee, Paul Ryan and Murray, are likely to put this bill kind of as they see it, I hesitate to use the word budget, but I guess I will, this budget to Congress and the Senate. As all of our representatives come back to work tomorrow from their Thanksgiving break. Thanksgiving seems like that was forever ago. But then again, this is our Congress. And they'll be back on Tuesday, so you can at least sleep well tonight, knowing they'll be back in play and ready to work on Tuesday. I know I feel better. I feel so much more secure. Anyway, so I'm going to talk a little bit about where we are with this budget debate. I've got to talk about Obamacare because I don't want it to lose any momentum or lack thereof. I don't want that to happen. I want to keep it out there in the forefront of our mind. Some interesting new developments coming out in reference to that. I want to talk a little bit about that as well. Let me just tell you what we can expect for the week. Nothing really coming out today. Tomorrow we have the JOLT number. The JOLTs I don't usually talk about, but in light of the numbers that we got out last week on the job numbers, JOLTs are the job openings report that comes out. So that'll be out tomorrow. So that's something I guess we'll take a look at for lack of a whole lot of information other than that coming out today and tomorrow. On Wednesday, we have the Treasury, I have to swallow hard here when I say this, Treasury budget. They still call it a budget, by the way. Someday we'll have a real budget. It is not likely it's going to be this time around. I would suspect when it's all said and done, we will have our 14th continued resolution of the budget. But anyway, they still call it, the Treasury Department still calls it their budget. Basically what it is, it's not a budget, because a budget is a list of items that you have budgeted and then the cost against those things you have budgeted. Well, they don't do that. It's just going to give us the cost of what we had for the November budget. I usually print that out every month. I will do the same because I like to have that in front of me almost at all times, just to kind of get a feel for where we're spending. If you want to see it for yourself, it's a very interesting report. It's not that difficult to read. It basically breaks down every segment of the government. It'll tell you what we've spent to date on it and where we are with that. So it's pretty interesting. It'll make you a little sick, but take a look at that. That's coming out tomorrow on Wednesday. So that will be out. On Thursday, we have initial job claims. We have retail sales numbers coming out Thursday. That should be interesting. That's always an interesting number, particularly this time of year. And it's a very important number as we look into the future and what retail sales numbers are doing. So that's coming out. And we also have export-import prices coming out. Then on Friday, we have producer price index numbers coming out. So that's about it as far as economic numbers go. Of course, let me just mention this budget, what is emerging out of the budget deal. One thing that is emerging from this so-called budget deal is a partial repeal of the so-called sequester. I frankly think that's a huge mistake because I think you cannot repeal any part of the sequester, because if you do that, let me just get something straight so that you all understand that. The sequester deal of last year that everybody hated, that everybody thought was going. Remember, the sequester was going to be devastating and crippling to the economy, according to Democrats. And in fact, it was a non-event. But I'll tell you what it did do. It's interesting because they were talking about the sequester last year being this devastating thing that was going to happen to the economy. And now they're talking about all the money they're cutting out of the budget. Well, it's because of the sequester. If it wasn't for the sequester, those mandatory cuts, we'd have nothing. Nothing. But nevertheless, they're looking at repealing that and having federal agency spending at about $1.015 trillion for years increase for years 2014, 2015. But all in all, the deal that they are cobbling right now is going to do nothing to reduce the 17.2 trillion dollars of our debt. It's going to do nothing to reduce that by all accounts. Now, it's still early in the process and some things could change. But here is the part that I was looking at last night and this morning, and debating whether I want to bring this up now, because it's not firm, but it's something that is being contemplated, and both sides of the aisle seem to be somewhat in agreement with this. Now, the reason I didn't want to bring it up, because of the aggravating nature of it and the headache that it's causing me. By the way, I want to give you the phone number because we're going to take calls, 866-300-9298, 866-300-9298 if you want to weigh in. So there apparently is a deal right now that is going to save money by cutting military pensions. Cutting the pensions of the military. Paul Ryan, the Republican, Murray, the Democrat, they are agreeing to this, it looks like. So the question facing House Senate negotiators as they come to close this deal and another round of sequester happening are, can they replace some of that Pentagon spending by cutting military pensions? Let me tell you something, folks. Let me just tell you something about the stinking weasels on Capitol Hill. Let me tell you, you want to cut pensions? How about you look in the mirror if you want to start cutting pensions, and not from the men and women that allow you, fight for our freedoms, and give you the opportunity to be the weasel that you are, because this is a free nation. You want to cut something? How about the fact, let me just give you one example. The George Bush the elder receives a pension from the CIA, receives a pension as a member of Congress, receives a pension as a vice president, receives a pension as a president. How about you cut them all and say you get a pension for the highest office in which you serve, period? How about you do all that? Do you know the billions of dollars that alone would cut? How about you take a look at term limits and say, by the way, when you serve one term, that is duty to your country. You get nothing. After that, you can receive a pension. How about looking about cutting the pensions of those in Congress? But no, they're not going to do that. They're going to look at cutting the pensions of our military. You got to be kidding me. You want to cut something? How about you start cutting the federal pensions of everybody else before you start looking at the military? Why is it the military is such an easy target? Let me tell you why it's an easy target. It's an easy target because we live in an environment where the military is a bad thing. We live in an environment where President Obama has made a decision that everything can be solved through political negotiations. I got your negotiations. It's political negotiations. That's the answer. So we're gonna negotiate with terrorists. You know, John Kerry is being put on a pedestal as if he's the greatest statesman of all time. He's making John Adams look like a pathetic person because he's negotiating some sort of deal with the terrorist of Iran. It's unbelievable that we live in a world today. This is why military pensions are on the table, where we, America, will become stronger by making the strong weaker. I want to tell you, I'm going to be watching this, but you would all better. I don't care if you've ever served a day in the military, it's irrelevant. You better get on the phones with your congressmen, your senators, your local legislators, and say, if this goes through, you're done. You're done. It's incredible. But see, nobody cares about a strong military. Nobody. Not Paul Ryan, apparently. Not any of the other Republicans. That they could possibly be in agreement. You mean to tell me you can't look? I just got finished telling you, print the budget. It's coming out tomorrow from the Treasury Department. Take a look at all the spending. Has anybody out there that has ever worked for the military, has worked for a federal agency of anywhere, or maybe working now for them, you mean to tell me there's no fat in your department? You believe that there's no corruption in the purchasing, the GSA of the government. You believe that there's no duplicity, that we can't cut billions of dollars out. That you're just going to take an easy target like military pensions and cut that. I am praying that could not possibly happen. Could not possibly happen. But let me just say, it's on the table. And I think it is a pathetic state of our Congress. And you know what? It probably will not see the light of mainstream media. As a matter of fact, as far as I know, I don't know anybody else that's talking about it yet, but you're going to hear me talking about it. Unfortunately, few in Washington are listening to this program. Unfortunately, we're only covering 40 states or so. And I don't know if it's going to get any legs in mainstream media, but probably not. But it's a sad day. You all know how much I love our military, how much I care about our military, how much I love this country, and it just hurts me. Let me tell you something. These aren't men and women that are retiring on big fat cat pensions by any stretch of the imagination. And we would talk about cutting some of that. Why those in Congress continue. I think we ought to pass a law. You want to save? How about we pass a law that no Congress can leave office with a net worth more than, I'll be generous, 25% of the net worth they came into, that they had when they came. How about we pass a law about that? Wouldn't that be interesting? What would lobbyists do? Oh, my word. This has got me fired up this morning. I hope it's got you fired up this morning, because you better call your congressmen, your senators, and let them know that better not even be a consideration, even something we should even be thinking about. Anyway, I got a lot of other information, but I want to get to your calls. 866-300-9298, 866-300-9298. You're listening to American Family Radio Financial Issues. We'll be right back.